fourth graders, Mrs. Smith here to do your Chapter 10 review with you. As always, I'm going to do some of the questions with you. The remainder of the questions you're going to need to do on your own. You can always bring your questions to our next Zoom meeting if you are in my class, or your teacher's next Zoom meeting if you are in Mr. Tillish or Mrs. Schnett's class. So that being said, we're going to jump right into your review. Now up here is your vocabulary check. You see that you have to write some examples of decimals and some examples of tenths and hundredths. This should be something that you are capable of doing on your own, so I am going to skip these questions today. If you feel like you need to refer back to some old material to remind yourself of some of these words, the beginning of this chapter is a great place to find all of your vocabulary cards, and those will have examples on them for you. I've also uploaded a Check My Progress video for this chapter where we do go over these questions here, and we also go over these types of questions as well. So if you're stuck on this front page, I want you to go to my YouTube channel and watch the Chapter 10 Check My Progress video. You can find it in the 4th grade playlist for 4th grade math. Okay? I've also included the link on the way that I share the videos with my students. So if you're in my class, you should see that Check My Progress video. If you're in Mr. Tillish or Mrs. Schnetz's class, you might want to check with them as to where they might be sharing that. Okay, so I am going to skip this entire front page because this is something that you guys should already be comfortable with doing, and I think you're all capable of. So we're going to flip back to the back page and do some of these questions because this is some of our more recent material. So I'm going to do number 7, and then you're going to do number 8. So we're going to shade the model and then write the decimal. So this one says 4 out of 10. I have 10 blank boxes here. I'm going to go ahead and use my highlighter to shade 4 of them. There we go. Okay, so I've shaded in, whoops, there we go, 4 out of my 10, right? And so that means that I'm showing 4 parts of a whole, 4 out of 10, or we say it in decimal form, 4 tenths. Okay, again, this is a good review if you were stuck on the front. So then here you go, you're going to go ahead and do number 8, but this is out of 100 this time. So you're working in hundredths on question 8. So make sure that your answer shows hundredths. Okay, going ahead down and looking at number 9. Number 9 is asking me to write 8 tenths as a fraction with a denominator of 10 and shade the grid. So again, I'm going to do those steps that we just did in question 7 and 8, except now I'm trying to show this decimal as a fraction. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and shade in my 8 tenths. That means I have 8 out of 10. So I'm going to color in 8 of them. Okay, so now I have 8 out of 10. When we talk about decimals as fractions, my decimal here, my number in the 10th place is my numerator. And my denominator is the number of parts I had possible, just like when we talk about fractions. We can also see that this 8 is in the 10th place. They said with a denominator of 10. So here we go. Okay, you're going to go ahead and do number 10. This time you're going to show me 41 hundredths. So you need to color in 41 of these squares. A great way to do that quickly is to shade in rows of 10, right? You don't need to color in each individual box. So I'm actually going to get you started with this one. So if I shade all the way down this first row, that's 10. And then a second row is 20. And then 30. And then 40. And they want me to have 41. So I'm going to shade in 1 extra square. So now you can see I have 41 shaded out of 100. Okay? So that little 1 extra down here is my 41. So you're going to write that as a fraction, a denominator of 100. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite down here. And it says write each fraction as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100, then write the fraction as a decimal. So when we talk about converting or making equivalent fractions, they want me to change 9/10 so that it has a denominator of 100. So what do I need to do to this 10 to make it 100? When I make equivalent fractions, I multiply the denominator and the numerator by the same number. I know they want me to have this one have a denominator of 100. So 10 times what gets me to 100? Yep, 10 times 10 gets me to 100. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top to make it equivalent. So I'm going to multiply by 10 up here as well. And 9 times 10 is 90. So 9/10 is equivalent to 90 hundredths. And as a decimal, I know that that looks like this. Okay? So this one is 90 hundredths. If you just wrote this, you would have 9/10. Again, those are equivalent, but I'm supposed to be writing this new fraction as a decimal, which means I do need that 0 there in the hundredths place. You're going to go ahead and do the same thing for 3/10. Remember, you're going to need to make the denominator on 100. So what are you going to have to do to this 10 here to turn it into 100? And remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you need to do to the top. So I want you to try that one. All right, numbers 13 and 14 have some new directions. They say add, write each sum as a fraction with a denominator of 100 and as a decimal. Okay, so the first step here is to look at my two fractions that I have. I cannot add these fractions just the way they are. So I can't add these fractions just the way they are because they do not have common denominators. In order to add fractions, I need to have common denominators. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fraction here, 2/10, and I'm going to turn it into an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. The reason I'm doing that is because this fraction already has a denominator of 100, and I need those equivalent denominators, those common denominators, to add these numbers. So how do I turn 2/10 into a fraction that has hundredths? I'm going to do the same thing that I did up here. I'm going to take my 2/10 and I'm going to multiply my 10 by 10. And whatever I do to the top, whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So I'm multiplying both of those by 10. 10 times 10 is 100, which is the common denominator that I wanted. And then 2 times 10 is 20. So 2/10 is equivalent to 20 hundredths. And now I'm just going to continue with my adding. So I have 20 hundredths now plus 36 hundredths. Okay, when I add fractions with common denominators, my denominator stays the same. And all I need to do is add straight across with those numerators. So 36 plus 20 is 56. And now I have 56 100ths as my fraction. Again, we're just going to write this as a decimal. And so I have my 56 hundredths is my fraction. And now as a decimal, I write that like this. 2 place values over from that decimal because I'm working in hundredths. Okay, I want you to try that same thing on number 14. All right. So we're going to do number 15 now, and then you're going to be responsible for number 16. The directions for number 15 and 16 say order each set of decimals from greatest to least. That means my biggest one has to come first. You'll notice here that I have some decimals as in tenths and then 2 in the hundredths. So I want those to be the same, just like when I'm adding or ordering fractions. I want them to have the same value. So how do I turn this this 3/10 into hundredths? Well, as you saw up here, do you remember when I said 9/10 is equivalent to 90 hundredths and that you had to have this 0 here in order to make that say 90 hundredths? We're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to add that 0 on. And now I have 30 hundredths. Okay. And so here are my new decimals that I'm going to be ordering. All right, and so I'm always going to look at the tens place first. The decimal with the number in the tens place that's the greatest is the biggest one. So looking here, I have a 3 in the tens, a 2 in the tens, and a 6 in the tens. Which of those is the greatest? If you said 6 in the tens, you're correct. So this one is the largest because this means if I had a hundreds grid, 61 of them would be shaded in. Okay, now looking at the two I have left, is having 30 shaded in or 23 shaded in greater? Yep, 30 shaded in is greater. And then that means my smallest one is 23 hundredths. So this is the order you should have for these ones. I would like you to go ahead and try number 16. Over here, you have some problem-solving questions. All right. So there are some questions on this page that you need to solve on your own. I'm going to do, let's see, I think I changed my mind. I think I would like you to try all of these word problems on your own. The one that I was going to say we could do together was number 18. However, in an attempt to keep this video short, I'm going to skip that. I did a question very, very similar to question 18 in the Check My Progress video. So again, if you need help with this one, you're going to want to refer back to that Check My Progress video. Watch me do that question. You'll see the coins in that video, and we talk about how to add those up. So again, you're going to want to finish up this page. It goes to question 21. And then depending on your teacher, you might need to do the backside with this reflect section. If you are in my class, if you are in Mrs. Smith's class, you do not need to do this page. If you are in Mr. Tillish or Mrs. Schnett's class, they might be making you do that page. So you will want to check in with them or check your daily checklist with them to see if you are also responsible for that page. Again, make sure that you circle any questions that you get stuck on. Please ask us for help. We really appreciate when you guys ask such great questions. So make sure that you reach out to us if you get stuck, and we would be more than happy to help you. Good luck, fourth graders. I'll see you next time.